This is the Storyworks Roundtable, where we have conversations about craft. Because becoming a successful author begins with writing a great story. Hello and welcome to the Storyworks Roundtable. Today, Robert, Kathryn, and I are talking about agency, and this will be a library episode. So Kathryn will link it to related episodes in the show notes. Also, if you might be interested in taking a seat at the round table, shoot me an email, info@storyworkspodcast.com. So, Robert, you brought this topic to us, so why don't you introduce it? What aspect of agency should we dive into?
When the main character is always on the back foot. So, if you've got any story, really, probably we could say to simplify storycraft, in the first half of it, they're going to be a sort of at the effect of the antagonist. And then in the second half, they might be more proactive and being able to take steps to find the way to defeat the antagonistic force. So how, when we've got that character always on the back foot, do we demonstrate agency when stuff's happening to them? So to put it simply, we're told, put the character up in, trap them in a tree, throw rocks at them, and then set the tree on fire. Well, how is that demonstrating any agency for the character? What are they trying to do to get out of that? How do you show that without ruining the fact that they really are under pressure and at effect of the antagonistic forces? Because I was thinking about the thing they climbed the tree. Yeah,
they had
well, there you go. Yeah.
Wait, wasn't it Deus Ex Machina? Didn't the author's God pluck the character and drop it into the branches?
That's the thing. That's right.
Yes.
And I was thinking also about the example of, say, I think I mentioned to you off camera, the Tommy Lee Jones in U.S. Marshals, where they're on the back foot with finding a fugitive in a plane crash, yet the character is still demonstrating great agency, but not just saying, okay, you do this, we'll find this, we'll get this, we'll put it all together, and that's our trail. No, it's still, he doesn't know what he's doing. There are people still throwing left field things at him. There's sudden stuff happening, yet still he appears to have agency, even though he's always on the back foot. And I think that's really clever compared to, say, a poorly constructed story where the character is either always reacting, and so you just think, well, they're a total victim, and so you just don't feel like they're doing anything, and it's stuff just happening without any reason. Or the other way around, stuff has happened and they're in control of it too soon. So they're just directing, oh yeah, okay, we're going to do this. And before you know it, they almost seem to have solved the problem. So it seems like the balance of agency and the antagonistic forces is a really hard thing to do. So,
yeah, well, you have to keep in mind that agency can be very narrowly defined as, your character making a choice that has consequences. I mean, that is a good working definition of agency, but it gets too narrow when that definition only applies to the character in relation to the big bad. So let's look at a classic apprentice story. I'm going to use Kung Fu Panda, but you could also use Karate Kid or Star Wars right. So Kung Fu Panda is perceived as a big fat slob by his peers in the dojo. Everybody thinks he's a failure and he doesn't belong there, and they can't wait to get rid of him. And he cannot succeed at his training up to a point, right? So for part of that early journey, he's going to keep sucking at what he does because this is his major hurdle to acceptance, to advancement, to self-realization. So how do we not lose sympathy for him? How do we not get bored with him? How do we not disconnect from the story? Well, he has to do some things, like he tries really hard. He's all in it. He's got a big heart. He's dedicated to it. So we're sympathetic. We're connecting to him. We're empathetic with his journey. Mm-hmm. And it's never, the journey is never fail, 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 beat the villain. You have to win some, lose some, right? So the fact that he gets himself from outside the like stadium gates to in the position to be chosen to enter the dojo as the chosen one, right, to win this epic battle, that's agency. And he didn't go in there to be the chosen one. He just wanted to see what was happening. He just wanted to be there because of his big love for kung fu. That's endearing.
Right.
And, you know, when he's facing all of these challenges and failing horribly at them, he's trying hard.
Right.
And we like him for that, right? And then he has one more. He has that moment in the kitchen where he goes for like the cookie and somebody put it way, way, way up high. And he does some like mad ninja moves to get the cookie. And Sifu witnesses this and is like, oh, right. So that's agency. He just needed the right circumstance and the right motivation and to not have anybody watching him and mocking him. And so that act of getting the cookie, his choice and action, had a consequence that advanced the plot because unbeknownst to him, Sifu saw it. And now Sifu knows how to train him. So now we're over that hurdle and we never lost our audience. So sorry. Okay, Kathryn.
I was going to build on that too. Like the agency doesn't have to be in direct conflict with the antagonist, right? You don't have to be butting your head up against the big bad, like you said in the beginning, right? So his agency is also shown in the fact that he starts cooking for his peers because he wants them to like him and he knows how to cook, right? So he's using what he already knows and the skills he already possesses to make a decision to try and do something that isn't necessarily straight line to I'm going to be Kung Fu master, right? But it's still showing him moving forward and making a decision that then ends up, because everyone now knows he loves food and he's in the kitchen and blah, 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 turning into that moment, right? So our agency doesn't have to be direct line to still have that character making those decisions that matter, right?
Right. And I think what you're saying too, Kathryn, that's really important is that the decision matters. So it's not a direct line to being a Kung Fu master, but it's not so tangential that it's disconnected because he's cooking the food for his friends, he's looking for acceptance with his peers, and they ultimately need to be a team to defeat the villain in the Kung Fu battle. But at this stage, we aren't even thinking, you know, they're going to be a team and they're going to defeat the villain. Panda's just thinking, I want him to like me a little, right? I want some friends since I'm here. I want to kind of fit in.
Yeah. Well, and you could say he's reacting to the situation he's been put into, but in reacting, he's making a forward,
making choices,
using his agency.
Yeah.
Right. And everything is, you know, something happens to the protagonist. The protagonist has to react, action, reaction. But in reacting, the protagonist has to make a choice and take an action. And then the other characters, the circumstance, the environment reacts to the protagonist. So there's always a back and forth. If you're writing a story that's just bad thing happens to the character, bad thing happens to the right, then you fall into this cycle of a character without agency where he's being buffeted by the storm.
Doesn't matter what they do.
Or they're letting other characters make those decisions for them too. A bad thing happens and then they turn and look at mentor and mentor tells them exactly what to do and then they do it. That's not agency, right? That's not them making a choice in the right direction.
Yeah, so if you look at masterworks, as you say, like the Kung Fu Panda or Karate Kid, then you do have an apprentice. So that's a really good idea, is to study apprentice stories because they are at effect of a mentor or a master who is directing them. Yet they still, for the story to work, they still have to find a way to exercise their agency and make choices. And I really like what Kathryn said about don't think of it as straight line, because I think sometimes when I'm plotting, I'm not saying I'm particularly falling into this agency problem, but it's made me think about it in detail, especially at a beat level, where you're delivering moments where you're putting your character in difficult situations and they still have to demonstrate agency, but the agency might take them down the wrong path, etc. So it made me think about what Kathryn was saying, is that, life is not a straight line. And in a way we're simulating life when we're crafting fiction. But if you plot something and you're a big plotter like I am, and you're going from, here, then it can feel like you've plotted a straight line. But in actual fact, the story can't afford to take that straight line, because it will just feel wrong to the reader. There won't be the setbacks. There won't be the ups and downs. There won't be the small wins that gradually lead to big wins, or even the really clever thing, like the scene that teaches without them teaching. So like the wax on, wax off, or the jumping for the cookie or the cooking for the team members is really just a foreshadow of how their agency is really going to execute to defeat the big bad later on.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I think when we focus too hard on plotting, we can forget about character and theme. So you want every scene to be advancing 2 out of 3. So character and theme, or character and plot, or plot and theme. And if you're always looking for, like, what's this choice? What's this action? What's this? You might forget that you've got more story at your disposal to keep us moving forward and to create choices with consequences and moments of agency. So something that just popped into mind is Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I think at the end of season 1 says, I can't do this, it's too much, and she skips town, right? And she goes and is in LA or something. And when she comes back, she's a different person. Her friends look at her differently. Bad things didn't stop happening in her hometown. So there are a lot of consequences from that choice, but that was about character and theme. Can I carry the weight of this burden? Can I be the chosen one? Can I risk seeing my loved ones hurt or killed because I wear this mantle of, the Slayer? So she actually steps away from what we know as the plot. And when she comes back, there's a lot of fallout from it. And that advances our story. She has agency. It complicates the next movement in the plot arc of that future season. So when you think about your character's agency, choices, and consequences, don't limit yourself to the main plot line. Also look at your subplots, your supporting characters, your character arc. You have a lot to choose from.
Interesting. This definitely from mixing up global versus what's on the page. I think because at some point, as I said, you're a character. Your main character is going to have sufficient agency to defeat the villain, assuming it's not a tragedy or a cautionary tale. So it's hard to then think about that on the page. Okay, so in the almost everything up to then, stuff that the character does isn't going to work, which is fine because they've got the agency, they're putting in choices, and the consequences are that it doesn't work. But then what if they need to learn? So we come back to your apprentice thing, which is study the masterworks, where they need to learn or realize something or experience a revelation. And that's a hard thing to do and maintain a character who feels like they have agency. Right. But as you say, it's perfectly doable as long as you don't just get them to be instructed and move off like a good little, robot.
Yeah. Consequences don't mean failures.
No.
Right. And I think, I'm going to go parenting on us, right? Think about parenting your children, right? They make a choice, they have a consequence. Sometimes that's it feels like a failure, right? Like they're never going to learn. But in reality, what is discipline? What is consequences? What are punishments for? It's to teach your child what they should be doing, right? How to move forward in a way that is safe or respectful or polite or whatever that issue is that you're trying to teach, right? So you can think of yourself, author, as parenting your character, right? How do you need to discipline them, and what do they need to grow in order to become what they need to be for the climax, right? Not necessarily that it's a failure or a negative, but that it, sorry, speaking of children, she's yelling at me, but there you go. So that was my thought.
Well said. Yeah. I like that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mapping it into something that's important in real life, where where you're guiding your character through to something that the character doesn't know how to achieve in the story, but we know as a parent how that's going to play out. So yeah, that's a clever way of looking at it as well. If you get stuck at any point where, well, how am I going to, help this character learn what they need to learn? I'll think of it as a parent and, showing a child the way without doing it for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right. And then the key is to keep everything weaving together so that nothing becomes irrelevant to the story's through line, so that it all gels in some way.
Yes.
Even if you don't see how in the moment, like you mentioned Karate Kid, wax on, wax off. He's like, okay, he's using me as unpaid labor. Well, no, he's actually teaching you a block. You just don't know it yet, right? So it becomes something other than the protagonist thinks it is, and it slides right back into that main plot of developing that skill to beat the villain at the end, and not everything is going to be that neat and tidy. Of course, it's just a neat example.
It's a tricky thing to do, isn't it? You're balancing what the protagonist is being forced into. Like I said at the start, they're in the tree and the tree, the rocks are being thrown at them. Now the tree is on fire. They've been forced into that. And then finding a way to demonstrate their agency and the choices they make and the consequences that come with that, without just having them constantly or, always boxed in. Because that can feel like a really defeating story to read if, everything they're doing just makes things worse and worse and worse and worse. And after a while, you get tired of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I wouldn't want to read a story like that.
Yeah, and equally the other way around. Everything they do just, keeps working, and they're on the trail of the crook or they're, exposing the baddie. That life doesn't work like that.
No. So if we solved the agency riddle tonight, Robert.
Parenting. Yeah, parenting.
Parent your protagonist.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's, there's always a good way to reframe these things, I think, to try and bring in, because we've just said life isn't straightforward. So where is life not straightforward? Well, in parenting, there's no how-to manual. You can't go and pick up something that says, right, this is what you do. It's all different. And our stories should be like that. My story is different to your story, different to Kathryn's story. We would never write the same scene, even with the same constraints, the same way. So, there's definitely, just like parenting, there's a million ways to do it.
Yep. So true. Well, Kathryn and I raise our tea to you, Robert. We weren't warned to bring the champagne flute, so wow, we've been
sprung
doing
it on
this.
them, folks. I sprung it on them.
Yep. You really did.
Yeah, we were quite surprised. We've been doing this for over 5 years.
I know. It's extraordinary, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
And great journey. I learned heaps. And the only reason I'm stepping away is because I'm doing this. I'm trimming back commitments in every area of my life. I want things to be simpler and less set to a schedule. And I'm writing more, so that's a good thing. So, there's going to be more time for that. And also there's a little thing where in order to participate in the podcast, it always has to be first thing in the morning for me.
Right. Because of Australia, folks, not because we're all early birds. It's a time zone thing.
It's a time zone thing. So, and I'm not particularly a morning person, yet I also recognize it's a prime time for me. So there's a little bit of, I'm trying to trim back on lots of things that are going to give me more freedom. So Yeah, but it's been a fantastic ride. I've learned heaps from the round table discussions, things that I'm still applying to this day, and hopefully I'll come back on as a guest at some point.
Definitely. Well, and you will live on in perpetuity on these episodes on the internet. And, I've loved having you as one of the co-hosts here. And I'm so grateful for your contributions and showing up all the time and bringing your particular expertise and wisdom to the show. So thank you so much, Robert. It has been an honor. Yeah. Well, great success to you with everything that lies ahead.
Thank you. And likewise to both of you. And the new host, I shall anticipate eagerly.
Thank you for listening to the StoryWorks Roundtable. Find all our shows, show notes, and videos at storyworkspodcast.com.